Okay, guys, men of values. If you watch the other episode, Josh is here, and we're just talking the way every person should talk or men should talk. We're having conversations about stuff that's real. Um, and the last episode, he talked about his marriage and what he did, what he'd been through to build his life he has now, which is very inspirational. What I asked him when the camera was off, how did dating go before you met your wife? He's a charming guy, pretty attractive. I don't know, a little bit. I'm playing with it. But I just wondered because he mentioned the drinking thing crossing over into the marriage.
Yeah.
So I wondered what happened before that because I kind of had the same thing going on. When I was younger, I would party all the time, and I think I stopped smoking weed at 20, but from 14 to 20, smoking a lot and drinking strong beer, Old English 800, whatever. So I wasn't on my path. I wasn't on my purpose. And it sounds like he kind of got his shit together. So if you want to share,
Sure. Yeah. Um, well, I can just jump back. Like I had said, high school did a lot of drugs. So at that kind of like middle school, high school, it's like a full decade of like just all day, every day weed kind of thing. And last 3 years of high school, a lot of hallucinogens and stuff like that. And um, I don't think I didn't never looked at myself as like, oh, I had a drug problem. I was always like, I'll quit when I have a reason to quit, kind of thing. And like the hallucinogens, I just like lost the desire to do them. I think I'm not gonna recommend that this is a route somebody go, but I tried to kind of do my own like shamanic journey.
okay,
So I took them by myself a lot, and like my I just lost the desire to do it. I think I dealt with what I needed to in that regard. And so again, I'm not endorsing that path or anything, but it is kind of what I went through, and then you go through things and it makes you who you are, right?
yeah,
um i I gradually grew out of the weed thing too, and other than that, I mean, I think I kind of dabbled in stuff here and there. I maybe drank like a handful of times in high school. um by comparison to the people I spent time with, definitely not the most extreme person. Maybe smoked the most weed, but I didn't really date in high school at all. Like
yeah,
couple of short kind of things were never serious. Um, and I think honestly I was probably just too high. Like I didn't really,
really,
yeah, I just wasn't really like didn't really interest me that much. I enjoyed talking to girls, and sometimes that girl would seem interested, and then we might hang out a little bit once I could drive around and stuff. But it was I started a serious relationship right at the end of high school with somebody I met in high school, and it was just really bad, you know. And I think at the time I would have been like, well, it's bad because of her. And it took me a long time to get to a point where I could be like, all right, we both contributed plenty to that, you
yeah.
know. Um, but that was like an on again, off again thing for, I don't know, 5 years or something. It was a while.
From high
So
school,
from high
5 years.
school, yeah, maybe not quite 5 years, but in that range. And so it was another like probably like five, going on 6 years or something before I ever asked another girl out.
Wow.
That was my wife. So
Oh,
I literally like I would meet a girl because I'm gonna say it took me 2 to 3 years to just feel like I could even consider dating.
yeah.
Like I was wrecked by that
I get that.
relationship.
I
It was
totally get
just
that.
brutalized me, and like
Yeah,
and that's when I first started drinking a lot too, was during that relationship as things got really bad, and
yes,
I just handled it really poorly, you know.
yeah. Me too.
I said
In
this
the
off
past.
camera, but I think that, you know, the issue I didn't face, you know, it was the issue of cowardice. And
Yeah,
so I was too afraid of facing what I really felt in certain ways, and also being exposed for who I really was. I wanted to be what I thought people thought I was, you
yeah,
know? And so I was like, that's just, sucks. It sucks to live
yeah.
that way, right? But then my wife, it was just like,
I want to jump in real quick.
yeah.
I do this periodically because he says something that's so enlightening. I, he admitted that he made a contribution to the detriment of the relationship he was in going out of high school, the 5 year deal.
Yeah.
And a lot of people cannot do that. They'll place the blame on somebody else for the failure of the relationship. And I think I did one of my first videos where I'm like, I reflect. It's like, close the chapter. If you're not going to see that person anymore, then you reflect on it. See, how could I have done better and what did I do wrong? And he understood that. That was a long time ago. I mean, you were a kid then, right? But he's
Well,
thinking,
it was 18 to I don't know 23ish or something
Yeah,
like that.
that's a kid.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
What did I do to contribute to the failure? And when we were talking about dating before, it's like that's what I see when I'm dating now is a lot of women don't want to take accountability for their contribution for the failure in a relationship. So it's very cool to hear a young man at 20 to 23 or 18 to 23 taking account and saying, wait a second, I can't blame it on the chick so much because I contributed as well. You know,
yeah, yeah. Well, and I gotta say, like, I think in the first, it took me that relationship to kind of really come to grips with that. I think, and so it was like maybe in the first couple of months after, because I think we finally like when we ended it was like we're gonna take a break. And I think it was like a month in where I was like, we can't get back together. Like this can't happen. And I'm putting you in this spot. Like this is what I think you should be or need to be or could be or whatever. And it's just not fair. It's not
yeah,
fair to you, and it's not. And so even though I think I still at that point would have really been like, she's crazy, and
eh,
um, but I had some glimpse of like this, just wasn't. It was bad, and it wasn't going to get better.
Ross and Rachel, they just took a break too.
Um, the thing was, like I said, it took me a long time to even feel like I could date from that because
Yeah,
I was
oh
just
yeah.
like I'm like I'm wrecked, like I can't. I'm no good to another person. And then when I felt like I was, then I would pay attention. And it's like, well, I didn't go to bars and stuff like that at this point. I feel like I could kind of gotten over like my drinking issues and stuff. I
Yeah,
felt like I would drink, but I didn't see anything problematic about where I was at
yeah.
during a lot of that phase. Now, as I started feeling like I was kind of ready to look at a relationship again,
Yeah.
but I basically was just like, okay, if I enjoy this person's company, I'll spend time with them. I will see what they're all about, and I'll look for red flags. And if I saw anything that I was like I couldn't uh, marry this girl, then I wasn't gonna look at, even look into it. I didn't want to entertain it because I didn't want it to be about you get lost in the the physical side and the affection and all that stuff in a
The chemicals
relationship.
from the brain.
Yeah.
Totally.
Yeah. So then you'll whitewash a bunch of stuff. This is cool. That's fine.
Yeah.
Oh, no big deal. And then when you start living with somebody, like, and for me, I wanted to be married and then move together, and like, so I looked at this and what I wanted in my life. I said I'd really gotten into my faith. That kind of led me to like kind of just abandoning everything. Like I was working as a chef. I was really actively pursuing a hip hop career, trying to make something happen and doing a lot of shows and
And I'll
stuff.
post links, y'all.
Um,
So
yeah, yeah, maybe we'll get to working on some stuff in the near future or something. Um, but I just kind of had to set it all aside. I knew I was supposed to do something else. Felt it really strongly that I should go to the Dominican Republic, and I went for a few weeks. And the next year, I spent about half the year between two trips. And I came back, and I didn't really know what to do. I felt like I was supposed to work in the city, helping people, and I just moved one day. I mean, there's a whole bunch of stuff, and it sound crazy, whatever. Like I had a lot of powerful spiritual experiences.
let me ask though,
Um,
because you're talking, but I'm like the Dominican Republic. What brought you there?
okay, so the church I was attending, it was kind of like a 20-somethings church, and we
Yeah.
met in the evening where another church met. So it was their church. They let us use it in the evening,
Okay.
and they were doing missions trips down to the Dominican Republic, and that was because a guy who attended the morning church was from the Dominican Republic and he was starting his own mission organization.
Oh, okay.
So they kind of decided as a church they were going to send all their groups to the to where he was from. And it wasn't like where he grew up, I don't think, but it was the same country.
Okay.
And so then we would stay with a Puerto Rican missionary, which that was the whole trip because he used to like be like a mule for the cartel and like ran up and down the East Coast and then like left that behind and like moved to the Dominican Republic with his family from Puerto Rico. And
Wow.
but we would work with Haitians, and they're like the poorest people, right?
Yeah.
And like
Oh yeah.
about the poorest people in the world. And it's the same island. Well, they'll come across the border looking for something, and it's still just destitution. So, um, yeah, I just kind of went. I just like got permission to go down there from the guy, and I just bought a ticket and went down there and stayed with his family, and then groups would come and go, and I would work with different people, and just one of those things where it was like, this is what I know I'm supposed to do right now. So I
That is,
just kind of got rid of my stuff, and
it's priceless life experience.
yeah,
I'm sure.
yeah, yeah. I mean, it's very eye opening. I mean, I could go back with some of that stuff to being a little kid, and you'd see the like feed the starving children videos,
Oh yeah, yeah,
and I think I remember that's like this kid, just gets this one bowl of rice and there's flies on his face and stuff, and
yeah.
it's like that impacted me as a little kid,
Oh yeah.
um, and so I think that always carried with, and then had this opportunity to go and like, man, you will talk to somebody who might not know how they're going to feed their kids the next day, but they would give you food,
Yeah.
and like they were happier than anybody I knew at home back in the States. So back here, it was like most of the people I knew, and I shouldn't maybe say anybody, I knew some people who probably were pretty solid at that time,
Yeah.
but it was like they're just thankful, they're down to earth, they're like generous and like
Yeah.
so welcoming and warm. And I mean, there's good and bad people wherever you go, right? But like
Totally.
you'd go up to somebody's house and they knew that you were there for good and wanted to be helpful,
Hmm.
and like they just didn't think twice about giving what little they had.
More embracing. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. And then it's like here you'd have all this stuff, and that was actually one of the things. Groups would leave, and
Yeah.
people would get hit in the face the day before they left with like, I'm going, especially adults, people who were established and had a nice house and nice cars and nice, and like shoot, like I've been spending 10 days down here with these people who have nothing. Now I'm gonna go home to all my, and there's
To the
it's like,
pimp life.
and it's like, okay, so don't beat yourself up over it. You were fortunate to be born in America
Yeah.
and to have the environment that was conducive to you leading to being the successful adult.
Yes.
And maybe you should do something good with it. You
Yeah.
know?
That's one of the things I've been thinking about lately when people are America sucks. I'm sliding off into politics a little bit. I know that. But when you think America sucks, the contradiction when you go to see,
Yeah.
Dominican Republic or some other group of people where the humanity is strong, but they're happy with what they have, or getting by with what they have. And
Yeah.
then you look at spoiled people over here that are demanding more. You know, uh, I think personal responsibility in earning your life. That's why I'm saying you earned your life. You built your life, you planned your life, and you followed the path, and you got it. You know, I mean, you still have more to do. I know that. And it's part of your plan, and that's awesome.
Yeah. On that note too, I think if I'm going to think practically about this, probably one of the most important things I think for myself was coming to a point where it's like, um, I needed to learn to do the work because it was the right thing to do, not because I thought it was going to get me something, you know?
Perfect.
So it was like, it's that learning that kind of and it sounds cheesy, but it's like the journey is its own reward,
Yeah.
you know? I think Peterson says something kind of like, Jordan Peterson says something kind of like, somebody asked what's the purpose of life, or, and he's like, find the heaviest thing you can carry and carry it.
Yeah.
Like, and it's like, that that is something to reach for, you know. The, what is it? Aim at the good. There's really like simple things that, um, if I make it about the destination, I'm not gonna get what I should along the way.
Yeah. The
And
journey.
yeah, and I don't want to be a person who gets to the end of my life and they say the ends justified the means. Like he did what he needed to do to get what he wanted to have, but rather the means would justify the ends. So I might not have what looks like wealth or riches to somebody
The
else.
fascia doesn't impress, but you're solid.
But yeah, but I've lived a life worth living, and I have 4 daughters, and my daughters are gonna grow up knowing what a man looks like and knowing what a man should talk to them like and treat them like,
Yeah.
and that's I'm not far from perfect, man. I lose my temper, but what I do is I go back to them and I apologize and I ask forgiveness. If I do something I know to be wrong, then I need to own that. And part of that is the like recovery piece. I know we've jumped kind of all over the place,
Yeah.
but um, it's like I have to face things head on, you know, fiercely, and kind of I think dance around it a little bit. But I've mentioned my faith and stuff, and that's the core of who I am.
Yeah.
It's not a thing where I'm gonna say, well, I believe in God, but I'm gonna keep God in his box and I'm going to live the way I want to live. It's like, no, if I believe this, then I need to really immerse myself in it and practice it to the best of my ability. And I think one of the core things that leads me to is like I'm humble because of because I don't believe I'm deserving of great things, but I get so much blessing in my life,
Yeah.
and so I don't feel like I work to not take that for granted. It's easy to get used to what's around you,
That's
and you can think, well, I deserve the good things in my life,
and
and
that's
it's
where
like,
you slip.
the world is a hard place, right? The
Yeah.
world is clawing at you to take you down,
Yeah.
and
One of
I
the
don't
things
mean conspiratorially. It's just kind of like that's life, you
yeah.
know.
One of the things that stood out by what you just said is what you show your daughters. Uh, a lot of people will not bat an eye to spend 300 grand on education for their kids, for their
Hmm.
daughters, or whatever.
Yeah.
But they won't give them the tools that they need to succeed in life as far as selecting a mate. So if you're setting that example, they're not going to take much less than what you set for an example.
That's
And
what I hope for.
you're doing it. You're being manly.
Yeah.
You apologize when you're wrong. You know that's beautiful. And one of the things I'll slide off in an abortion. Me, so I think mostly kind of Republican, but some of the things that Democrats say I'm on board with, and freedom of choice. I think for me, running out of time.
Oh, we got 11 minutes.
11 minutes. We're cool. Freedom of choice with early term, not last minute abortion. Early term abortion for me. That's a Democratic view. I tend to be more middle leaning right, but with the contrast between how this man takes care of his family and how we see other families that have 4 kids, just as you, not doing the right things, and then these kids become contributors or detractors from society. I don't believe in killing babies, but I believe in free birth control, free day after pill. I don't know, so that might stir up some stuff with people.
I was gonna say at some point we should come up with a spot where we might not agree, and I think honestly there's there's a point of like it's got to have nuanced views on things, right?
Yeah,
So like I have my personal beliefs, right, and I'm like as pro-life, pro-choice thing's a funky thing. Temple likes to do the like you're either pro-abortion or anti-abortion, and he just says we need to be this stark about it. It's because we should be honest about what we're talking about. Like,
yeah,
if you're honest about science, like the clump of cells argument is gone. Like, there's no, everybody knows that from conception, this is on a trajectory to become, to be born, right? So it's an arbitrary line if somebody wants to draw an arbitrary line about when they think a woman should be able to abort that, right? And you have everything now from people literally talking about post-birth abortion, which I first heard a story about this years ago. This like sound crazy. It was coming out of Australia, and Australia is like it's just a crazy place if you look at some of the stuff
oh
they're
yeah,
doing there. Um, but you have everything from right life at conception, no abortion whatsoever, to we should be able to literally kill this kid, let them die,
that's the broad spectrum.
and we got to be able to find some way to talk to each other because
I
if
agree.
and so I think that most people are like I think the majority of people, I know most is probably not the right word, are probably in this like first term mindset. It's really the kind of safer and legal idea, the Roe v. Wade, as it was sort of thought of and intended in its beginning.
Yeah,
And I can still say like, hey, I believe that it's infanticide to intentionally take the life of a child in any stage of
I would agree
development.
too.
Um, and so then there's like factors that got to be thought of in that. There's all these stories going around about women not being able to get care for miscarriages. There's nothing verified that I've seen. I've looked at it. This is hard stuff because I think it's really scary to people, but they're not looking at what's really happening. So,
Yeah,
to my knowledge, the states who've enacted the most stringent bans, they don't. No one considers an ectopic pregnancy, like a tubal pregnancy, to be an abortion when that's terminated, because it can't live. It can't, like, you'd have
Oh,
to be able to
okay,
take it
yeah,
out
yeah.
and re-implant it, like in a surrogate situation or
Okay.
something. The body would flush it out, and if it didn't, it could theoretically kill the woman.
Yeah.
Um, Miscarriages happen. There's states of emergency. There's some kind of rare, like a baby in utero could develop cancer. Like, it's
And
happened,
and
right?
pass.
And so these are extreme rare situations usually, but they're being presented as the main situation. And it's somehow that argument goes all the way to, we should be able to, some people say, any day up to their, like, literally you could be on your way to the hospital to give birth.
That's
um,
I
One of the
can't
big
agree with
questions I have is, like, if a woman is driving in her car and she's pregnant, and a drunk driver hits her and that baby dies, he's going to get charged with homicide. But that woman could be driving to an abortion clinic to abort that baby legally, right? And it's not a baby. It's not a human being. But it is if somebody else, and so that to me is, it's arbitrary,
that. Yeah.
right? And I get where someone's gonna be like, "You're a man, you can't," and I've heard everything
Yes.
from, "You can't even have an opinion on this," to, "You just don't understand what it would be like." Well, I don't understand what it would be like. I really
Completely.
don't.
No.
And I think there's a point where I sometimes go, you know what? There's what I believe is right, and then there's what I believe is the best way to govern.
Yeah.
And then it's like, there's a place where it's like, okay, I don't like it, but I think I can live in a place where somebody's saying, we're going to do, well, I've had to live my whole life with abortion legal.
Yeah.
And it's been more and more prevalent. And most people don't know a lot of the statistics around it and why it happens and when it happens. So there's all these things about, well, you got to have an abortion because you can't afford to. It's like, no, that's almost very few of the circumstances are because of financial need. Actually,
Really.
it's more of, like, I want a certain lifestyle.
And this is going to cause me a problem.
Yeah, and this is like, I mean, to be honest, this is like, people used to sacrifice their children to gods to get, like, financial gains in their life. Like, this was common ancient practice.
Yeah.
So I don't know. You draw the conclusion. It's like, this is the it's child sacrifice.
Yeah. Either way you
By
look
and
at it.
large,
Yeah.
most of it is. And I know that's maybe seems like a crazy thing to say to people, but
No.
that's seems like that's the stark reality of it. Is that I want money and possessions and things and a certain way of living, and I want the freedom to do whatever I want
And if
whenever
I
I
have
want to
this
do it.
baggage, I can't accomplish that.
Yeah, yeah.
You know.
And I think now, does that mean that I should be able to be um, imposing it past it's like, there's got to be a certain level where you draw a line and say, we're not going to allow it after this point.
Yeah.
It's this is a human being, and to me, it's a human rights issue
Yeah.
from birth. And I believe that the science backs what is also my moral conviction. But people can, at least you can have a conversation about it,
Totally. Totally.
and just because somebody sees that differently than me doesn't mean that I think that they're a bad person. There's either something they don't understand, or there's something that I've applied value to that they don't. And, like, we're people. Like,
Yeah.
we're more than that.
Yeah.
We're more than that piece of information. And so it's like, I should still treat you with dignity no matter what. And that goes back. And I know I took a long, so I'll stop with
All
this.
good. How much time we have left?
But 4 minutes. But
4 minutes.
I believe that human beings are made in the image of God.
Yeah.
Right? I think I got too quiet there, but that to me is a fundamental principle when I look at another person. Is
Yeah.
like, I have a responsibility to treat you in a certain way, because bar none, you have a great deal of value because you're a human being.
Yeah.
And that can't be taken away from you. You may do things that make me say, I need to watch myself around this individual, something like that, or so there's that, right? And then there's also, it's like late in the book of Matthew, I think chapter 25, in the Gospel of Matthew in the Bible, where Jesus is separating people. It's supposed to be end times, and they're saying, like, hey, we did all these great things for you. And he says, like, more or less, when I was sick and in prison and, all these bad situations, you didn't come and visit me. And they're like, when were you in prison? He's like, when the least of these were, like, so whatever you do to the least of these is what you're doing to me.
Yeah.
So it's like, man, that if I'm going to take that seriously, like I said, I want to take my faith seriously, then that means that I have to actually take that level of accountability.
Yeah.
So if I do something wrong to another person, I've done that to my God.
Not just virtue signal,
Like, so
right?
it's like that means I have to take ownership
Yeah.
of that. I don't get to be like, well, I was justified because he was being a dick. You know, I don't
Exactly.
get to pull that card. I have to actually say, oop, would I feel okay with that? You know,
Yeah.
um, and I'm certainly going to fail miserably at that. There's lots of times where I should have, could have, would have, but I'm trying.
Yeah.
You know, to take that level of ownership, and even and with my wife likewise. The Bible says a husband should love his wife as Christ loved the church, which is like to lay down his life,
Yeah.
right? And so it's like, well, that's what I'm supposed to live like. That's how I'm supposed to treat her, and I wish I did, you know. Um, but I keep aiming at that, and so I can say something that could just really hurt her and not even really think of it. Like it just be, I don't know. It's like the right moment, the right time. You say the wrong thing,
Yeah.
and then I could say, well, it was no big deal. You shouldn't,
But
and that might be my gut reaction. Is like,
the
you're wrong,
impact.
I'm right. But the
Yeah.
reality is, what do I actually want here?
Yeah.
Right? I want to love my wife well. I want her to feel like she's safe to be who she is. And if that means I need to like set myself aside for her, for the kids, in order to help them thrive, and ultimately I feel like I get so much more out of that. Like,
The sacrifice to let them
yeah,
build or help them build.
yeah, and then you get like love and adoration and respect, and those are the things that like men really need. Like
Yeah, I
men need
agree.
somebody to recognize that they bring value to the table, right?
Yes.
That I think is the men of values, right? It's like women tend to need security. It's biological. People can argue about it, but like it's hardwired into us,
Yeah.
And men hunted and protected and fought off the enemy
Right
and the
on the
lion and
bacon.
the
Yeah.
and we need to feel like there's something of that in us in order to feel like we're worth our skin.
Yeah, it's in our blueprints. So if we're not exercising it, we feel that we're not living to our full potential. I would say. How we doing?
Countdown, less than a minute.
36 seconds. Um, we talked about abortion, and I wanted that to be a representation. We don't completely agree, and you have your beliefs, and I appreciate your beliefs, but you explained why you feel the way you do. And in conversations, we need to do that. And I'm not saying I'm completely opposed to him or he's completely opposed to me, but he stated his beliefs and he backed them up as to say why. We need more of that. There's too many conversations that happen where somebody makes a statement, but they can't back it up. So yeah, we're about done. Thank you for joining us again. Men and Values, Scott Rockford and Josh.
Hey, thank you.
Cheers, guys. It's still so I can cancel it later.
Yeah.
Edit.
Well, if we could work it out, times when I'm going to come into the city, it's well worth the time. I think
Yeah,
I'll be curious to watch it when you post it and kind of go like, how do I like? Because I will watch the whole thing because I'll be like, I'm going to critique myself.
yeah, I do it all
Um,
the time.
but also if I'm going to like share it with somebody, I'll make sure I'm like, did I say what I meant to say, or I can give a disclaimer or whatever.
Yeah,
But no, I don't think I feel like I misstepped anywhere. But it's like, yeah, it's like a good building conversation
yeah.
for sure.
I'm concerned with the audio. You know me. Whatever. I think it
Yeah.
should be okay. Um, yeah, and I want to post. We got two 30-minute episodes, dude.
I can be kind of a quiet talker, so yeah, I was kind of trying to be aware of like, oh, did I let my voice get too low or
Your
get away from
voice,
the
your voice is way better than mine, man.
but I got
Yes.
the low tones in the
Yeah.
voice. So
Should do voiceovers. But what we covered, man, it's like holy shit.
covered a lot of ground.
Yeah, and
And not like necessarily deep on any one thing, but touched a lot of deep stuff.
yeah,
Yeah.
you're representing yourself well. And I, like I said, we ain't talked in a while. So
Yeah.
some of this shit, of course, I didn't know.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. I mean, how much of this? Because this, when I was that was I was still drinking then. You
When
know,
we
like when we worked on music and stuff. Like, I mean, at any given